Okay, so let's start. Welcome everyone for today's first meetup for the history of Greco-Roman philosophy. So let's go over the this meetup. Okay, hold on, let me see. So Zach, I hope you manage the administration. Okay, because a lot of people coming in now. So everybody will be muted by default. And if you need to speak, please raise your digital hand to type a question mark if you have a question. And if you want to have some comment, please put the exclamation mark in the chat. And if you raise digital hand, that means you have something to say about what the speaker is talking about. So we will call you out. So that's the general, and I'm not that strict to follow this kind of rule, but in general, we believe everyone will kind of follow this rule, and then we will have a meaningful conversation today. So first, let's define this project. And that's the first time, and probably also the first time of this kind. So it's kind of experiment. So everybody here will help to define what's going on, in the future project, the next week or next 10 weeks, 20 weeks meetup. So we are doing is a history of Greco-Roman philosophy, and basically we try to cover philosophy of 800 years from 600 BCE to 200 CE. And basically we focus on Western non-Christian philosophy. And we will focus more on philosophy than history. We will talk about history as the background, but the main purpose is talking about philosophy. And
you can use this. I'm just printing something real fast.
I think, Zach, can you mute everyone now?
Yeah, I will mute everyone right now. Sorry.
All right. So if you need to speak, then please raise your hand and Zach will call you.
Jason, you're muted.
Okay. So can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So basically, we will focus more on philosophy than history. And the history basic, of course, is also important. That's the background. And when we talk about philosophy, of course, we talk about philosopher. And the source, I will focus on the book or the writing of each one. So somebody asked about the level of the participant. And then I will call this one 101 and 102. That means you are totally new on philosophy, and you are welcome to join. And then I hope you will learn something. And if you already know the philosophy, have read the book, you are also welcome to join. I hope you will learn something from others. And then more important, I hope you can share what you have learned and then to everyone. So we can learn together through this 800 years philosophies. So the rule, we will mute everyone, and if you have a question, type a question mark on the chat. And if you want to comment on the speaker, either myself or other people, please raise your digital hand. And then if you have some comment about anything, then please type an exclamation mark on the chat. So we will call you up. And then, Zach, if this somebody want to talk, yeah, please let me know. Okay, so
Jason, we have a first question off the bat.
Okay, so please.
Will you be providing a reading list?
Yes. Okay, we will talk about this. Okay, every week I will post the philosopher or the books we are going to cover. So we encourage you to read the original or read the secondary source. And of course, sometimes a lot, and I don't expect people to read 4 books during a week, but do your best to understand what's there. The purpose is you can ask questions, and then if you learn something from your reading, and I will encourage you to share. And then I really encourage, if I don't want to see this one as my own meetup, I see all the meetup as a group, a collective meetup. So if you have something you feel like I want to have a presentation, I would like to have 5 minutes talk about this subject, please let me know before the meetup, and I will give you, schedule you to a section. Or if you read something and you are welcome, type the exclamation mark and during the meetup, and we will have time to give you talk about what you learn. Okay. So another thing is I try to meet on time, and then it's every Monday, 5 p.m. on the West and 8 p.m. on East, and we will last 1 hour and 30 minutes. And in general, I want to start on time and finish on time, and plus we'll give about 5 to 10 minutes grace period. And the weekly subject, okay, so since today is the very first time, so I'm not sure how far we can go, but in general, I will announce next week's meetup on the Tuesday, that means tomorrow. So I will list the subject, so probably you can figure out if you are in today's meetup, because where we end, then the next one will be next week's reading. So, and then requirement before the meetup, I hope you read the material and the second, or either the original book or secondary sources in order to ask questions or share your idea. And the format I prefer is about 50% presentation, 50% discussion. Okay, so plus minus depend on the audience. So any comments are welcome. And the important thing I would like everyone to be at least be related to the subject. So of course you can refer to this one is similar to Hegel talking about this, but in general, I would like to have your comment stick with our subject. And if you really need something, you really need more than 10 minutes to talk. For example, you really want to talk about Aristotle's 10 categories. So that will be very welcome to have you talk about for 10 minutes or more than 10 minutes about Aristotle's 10 categories. And then just please let me know beforehand, so I will. What you have recorded, and all the material we will be shared on the website. Even I haven't decided, on which link, but I will share later. So if you have any question or anything, no, then that's.
Oh, 1 second, Jason. One question: Will you be using Russell's History Philosophy?
I already, okay. So that's a good question, because if you know me, I run on the every Saturday I have Asian philosophy meetup, and before on every Thursday I'm doing the Bertrand Russell's history of Western philosophy, and that one I already finished the whole book. We take about a little bit more than 1 year. We read the word, every single word, every single chapter. So we finish it. And then I think that's the nature to start this one. And this time I'm not going to follow his writing, but basics, if you talk about Greco-Roman philosophy, it's similar, but I would like focus more on each individual book than somebody's writing. So, of course, Bertrand Russell's writing is welcome to bring up, but I really want to focus is on the book, and so would be, in a way, would be similar to Bertrand Russell's writing as a structure. So I kind of lay out to respond to your question. David, you raise your hand. Yeah, David, let me unmute you. You can speak. David, you can unmute yourself. Yeah,
I apologize. I'm navigating the reactions, looking for the message board where I would type a message rather than discuss something, because I don't want to slow you down. You're on a groove. I don't want to slow you down. I'm just looking for the typing protocol.
It's chat, David. It's chat next to participants on the bottom. You see share screen?
Got it. Okay, I'm good now. You can take me and mute me.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, so let's lay out the schedule now. Okay, so of course you will change from date, depend on our progress. So I've been thinking about this one, just answer Zach's question. Will you follow Bertrand Russell's structure? Another answer is no, because if I follow from the beginning, then I will start from the pre-Socratic philosophy. And then we will move on, and then we'll spend a lot of time talking about the Plato and Aristotle, and then move on. I think it's a little bit too boring if we do this way. So I figure out the best way probably is just jump in from the one everybody know of, everyone will be more interested. So I decided to start from the death of Socrates. So we start from this event, and then we were moving forward and moving backward. Then eventually we will cover everything. So that's the idea I try to do. So Rick, you have a question?
Yeah, we have one question. Let me unmute first.
Okay, so.
Rick, please unmute yourself.
Yes. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I apologize. I came in late. Is this the meetup on Socrates today?
Yeah, today's subject is Socrates. Okay, so we are going to the history of Greco-Roman, Greek and Roman philosophy, and then of course include the pre-Socratic philosophy and the Stoic from later in the Roman. But we will start from the death of Socrates. So that's I answer your question. So.
Oh, I see. Okay, so the schedule here today's on the death of Socrates, and then the life of Socrates is next week. Is that right?
That's what I try to do. But depend on today's progress, probably we don't have time to put Socrates to death today. So then we will have moved the Phaedo to the next week. So that's the really depend on today's progress. That's why I will announce next week's schedule on Tuesday. So really depend on where we end. Then I will decide what we're going to talk about next week. So, but in general, I will follow this route.
Okay.
So that's the schedule. I do it, and I think I will start to post on the meetup page, so you will be able to see. And then it's subject to change, but in general, I will follow this guideline. Okay, so that's the entire project at this moment. I try to cover is this philosophy. Okay, these philosophers. So we start from the red one, Socrates. Then we'll move on to Plato, Aristotle. And I probably will move back to the Thales, Anaximander, Pythagoras, Heraclitus, move on, and then go back to Epicurus, Lucretius, and all the way to Marcus Aurelius. Okay, so that's the idea. And then I try not to jump in around too much. We just keep some system. And I also don't want to stay in the same subject for too long, because sometimes people got bored and feel tired for the same person. For example, we may talk about Plato, easily talk about for 10 weeks. So, some people may feel boring on that. So I probably will do some changes. So the area we want to cover is essence, of course. And then when we talk about Greek word, it includes essence, and then pre-Socratic is Ionian, which is on this side, which is Asia Minor, and some on Italian side, okay, Sicily, this side. And after the fall of essence, then we talk about Roman philosophy. That's in Rome, okay, in this area. So that's the general geographic area we will cover for this project. And then let's talk about the book we will cover at this moment. Of course, you are welcome to give me suggestion and we will add or remove some. And it's difficult, okay? So, of course, we cannot avoid Platonic dialogues. And I don't know how many books he has, but for example, Republic have 10 books, okay? Laws have 12 books, and they have many, okay? So there's no way to cover every single book. So I just pick the one I think that's important. And of course, you can tell me which one you think is important, and then we can add on. And then some are very long, so I have to do my best to make it, finish in 20, 30 minutes. That's a difficult job. And then if you are willing to help me to do this job, you can let me know, and you want to present which book, and then I will schedule and can do it. So that's group of book we will cover. And another group of book we will cover is Aristotle's writing. So he also had a lot of writings. So another thing, and for the Roman philosophers, it will be easier because usually one person have one book. So so that's easy. So when we talk about Sextus Empiricus, we talk about the outline of Pharisees, right? Talk about the Seneca, we talk about his letters. So that's easier. Another difficult part is pre-Socratic philosophy, right? Because a lot of them, they only have fragments. So we have to use a secondary source for that. So I kind of lay out the book we will read. So I believe some of you probably familiar with some of these writings, and then if some of them you are not familiar or you haven't read, you can start to read, or you can wait until the meetup, then you will learn something. So that's the way I kind of organize the different school. So today we will focus, and these few weeks I will focus on the essence, right? Which everybody knows, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. And then during the same time, they have Epicureans, okay, or atomists. So they have the different group of philosophy. And of course, to the later time, we have Stoicism. Basically, at this moment, I try to cover is Seneca, Epicurus, and Marcus Aurelius. Okay. So about the pre-Socratic philosophy I will cover is Ionian school, which is on the Asian Minor, and which is more scientific. And also I call it mysticism, and it may not be the right name, but basically hope you know what I meant. It's on the Italian side. Sometimes I call them Sicilian or Italian, but basically we try to cover is Pythagoras or Pythagoreanism or Parmenides, okay, Zeno of Ilya, and Empedopcles. So the writing is not a lot, but it's also important. And that's one of the reasons I don't want to start from pre-Socratic, because for a lot of people, including myself, experience is reading pre-Socratic, sometimes you feel like they are talking about something not important. So that's why I would like to start from Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, because after we learn this, then we probably will understand why the pre-Socratic philosophy are also important, because Socrates is not starting from nowhere. Okay, he has his own historical history to learn. That's why I think it will be important later if you go through some of these. Yeah. So that's it. Before we start, and then before we really start to talk about the death of Socrates, and is anybody have any question, comment, want to talk about? That's the time to share your idea and what's your expectation. Okay, so look like we are fine to move on. So today, I put this one as one subject, Socrates, and probably have two parts, right? The first part is talking about the death of Socrates. And the second part, I will talk about the life of Socrates. And then, as you know, Socrates has no writings. So the only way we can do is based on Plato's writing and in Plato's early writing. Okay, so that will bring up Socrates' life. So that's everything based on Plato's writing. So of course you have a different source of you read somewhere, and you are welcome to bring in during the meetup like today. Okay, so the source I will use at this moment without any further suggestion, I will use is first is Meno, okay, which is one of all these books are in the Plato's dialogue. So Meno's basic subject, what is virtue, and Euthyphro, which is the first, usually this is the first book in Platonic dialect, which is talking about when Socrates was waiting for his trial. Then most important will be apology, which is Socrates' speech, defend for himself, and then he convicted to death. Then we will read or cover, the source was from Crito. So Crito is Socrates' rich friend. He tried to save Socrates from death, okay, bribe the jailer, and help Socrates escape. Socrates has to refuse this one. So the last one will be Phaedo. That's Socrates' last day. So I kind of feel like why I want to start from the death of Socrates, because I think the death of a teacher is important to start philosophy, because when teacher is alive, you don't separate the teacher and his teacher or her teacher. Only after his death, his teacher start to live, okay, without the person. So I kind of have this kind of feeling, and then I think it's probably, and since Socrates, Plato would be the core of the Western philosophy. That's why I think probably that's a good time to start the death of Socrates as a beginning for this one. So I hope you get my point. And then second part, I will talk about hope. We will do it in next week. We will talk about the life, okay, how Socrates, different view of Socrates. So of course I will base on Symposium, which is Plato writing talking about love, which talk about point of love, and he bring up 7 different kind of different person features, or different person talk about love, and then you will see different kind of personality, okay, of Socrates, because he, as a philosopher, how he behaved different in the drinking party. And another one I like to kind of introduce is The Cloud, written by the Aristophanes. It's a comedy. It's ridiculous Socrates. I know in my other meetup group, and then some people even quit not reading this book because they claim that it's difficult to read because it cannot deal with people make fun of Socrates. But I think in a different way. I think since he ridiculed Socrates, and that's just show, how the different view of Socrates. And then it's not true, but what he is doing and what the impact he made. And that also the cloud also being used. One of the hidden reasons Socrates has been brought to trial. Okay, so that's one, the second part of Socrates I'd like to bring up. So that's the source we are going to use. And then before we talk about the background of the history, it's open to any comment, question. Anybody have something to?
There was a raised hand, Jason.
Excuse me?
Anne has raised her hand. Let me just unmute her.
Okay, so Anne has some comment.
Anne, you're unmuted.
It's irrelevant now. I'm not going to split hairs. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
Yeah.
And then there's another one. Do you consider Xenophon writing?
Xenophon's writing, yes. Okay, yes. I will bring up Xenophon's writing, which is slightly different than Plato's view. Yeah, I will cover that one. And honestly, I didn't read his writing. If you read this one or something, and you are welcome to share, because I don't know much about Xenophon's writing, but I just read some comment on that. So, whoever read this one, you're welcome to bring up, and then that'll be great. And that's the purpose of this meetup. Yeah. Any other comment? Otherwise, I will move on. So before we go to the more detail, so let's go through some historical background. And of course, I just briefly put this one, since I already mentioned, this one will focus more on philosophy than the history account. So I know a lot of people join from the history a meetup group. So you probably know more on this, and you are welcome to add some background. So basically, I talk about before Socrates' death, right? So during that time, Greek has a war against Persian, that's another empire, and 492 BC at the Persian War, and then they have the Battle of Marathon, that's the Greek one, and then they have the Second Persian War, which is 10 years later. Okay, and then Socrates was born 10 years after the, during the 10 years before after the Second Persian War. So basically, he was born in the so-called the golden age of Athens, right? So it's the age of Heraclitus, right? So it's the leader of the time. And then during his time, I think it's about he's 40 years old, and the Peloponnesian Wars, because they already deal with foreign barbarian, okay, so-called barbarian, non-Greek, the Persians, and then it's in the Athens golden age, and they start a problem with Peloponnesian, the Sparta side. Okay, so that's the war between Athens and Sparta. And according to Plato's writing, especially in Symposia, Socrates joined the war, and then he also fight to defend Athens. So Plato was born, and then during the Peloponnesian War, that the plague in Athens, and that I don't know how many, but some said about 100,000 people died, 25% of population died, and Epicurus also died. During the time they lost the war, and then in Athens they started so-called the 30 tyrants, and that by Critias. Okay, so that's 404 BCE. And they have some connection between Plato. Plato's mother is the first cousin. So a lot of Socrates students are connected or related to the 30 tyrants. And then after the 30 tyrant rule didn't last that long, and then it also overturned, with short-lived only 8 months. So Athens tried to reconcile, then rebuild, and to go back to their democratic system. And during this democratic system, the fall of 30 tyrants, Socrates was prosecuted and sentenced to death. So that's the entire, just brief historical background. And then I know somebody probably have a better understanding during this one. And then I hope anyone can share what you know on this background. And before we move to the philosophy, and then anyone have anything to share?
You did a pretty good job. Just want to point out, obviously, Second Persian War was against Xerxes and the famous Leonidas in 300 in a battle of Thermopylae, which is obviously
thank you.
A lot of movies about that. And obviously, golden age of Pericles, even though it was the golden age of Athens, but he created one of the worst mistakes where he is hidden behind the Athens walls to fight Sparta, and also was unlucky because there was a plague. And as Jason had pointed out, over 100,000 people had died. And basically, with the death of the Pericles, it was the end of Athens. But the reason it was called Peloponnesian War is because of Peloponnesian League. This is where the Sparta had a league of many, so to speak, states, not states, but city-states, because a lot of the cities, or they call them policies, policies, they were city-states, and that's why it was called Peloponnesian War. Not because it happened in Peloponnesus, because of the league. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. Anyone have something to share about this background? Even we are focused on philosophy, but the background also important. Yeah. So. Okay. So, look, guys, I can move on.
Yeah, go ahead. There's no raised hands.
Okay, so just briefly talk about Delphic maxims. Okay, so there's 3 writing on the Delphic. Okay, Delphi, and so I think keep mentioned in Socrates is know thyself. Okay, and the second one is nothing in excess, and the third one, some people talk differently, but in general, people talk about surety bring ruins. And even I'm not very sure what they mean, but know thyself, that's the one keep being mentioned during the dialogue. So, okay, so before I do it, and then I think it's worth to insert one dialogue, which is Meno, because it's kind of give a hint of how Socrates, firstly, Socrates' epistemology, okay? And the second is give a hint of why Socrates got persecuted. Okay, so that's Meno. Okay, Meno is a noble aristocrat from the north of Athens, and he came to Athens and talked to Socrates. So basically, the conversation is Meno's ex-Socrates, whether virtue arete is taught or acquired by practice or come by nature. That means people born with virtues. Okay, that's his question. So to answer his question, Socrates want to know what is virtue, right? So Menno started to talk about virtue. Like he probably take the relative point of view, like for man has a different virtue, for women have a different virtue, for slave, for the master, all have a different virtue. So virtue are different. And then Socrates not satisfied with this one. He said he is asking the nature of virtue. He's not asking for the example of virtue. And the example is when I ask you what's the color, you just tell me this is blue, this is green, this is yellow. It's just example. okay, of color is not the definition or answer the question, what is color, right? So then come with one so-called famous called Meno's paradox, right? So if you know what you are looking for, the inquiry is unnecessary. You already know what's color, then why you ask what's the color? So if you don't know what you are looking for, inquiries become impossible. So in today's language, you will say, how do you know what you don't know? So you don't know what's color, like a blind person. How can you ask this kind of question, what is color? So that's the question, they bring up this one, and they become Socrates' epistemology. So then Socrates, that's another famous scene, as Socrates asked, because Menno has a slave boy with him, and the slave boy had no mathematical geometry training at all. So Socrates gave him a square and asked the slave boy to construct another square, which the area is twice of the given one. So step by step, the slave boy just double the side, and on the both sides, then draw another square. And Socrates told him, oh, that's not right? Because you compare this one, actually it's 4 times from the given one. I ask you to construct a square, which is 2 times. So how do you do it? So Socrates just tell him, okay, how about if you cut in half, become 2 triangles? Then it should be 4 triangles. So step by step, without telling the slave boy mathematics or geometry, eventually the slave boy construct a square which is twice the area of the given one. So that's the famous scene. Okay, Socrates. So the purpose here, Socrates is proof he didn't teach the slave boy, and the slave boy has no prior training on mathematics and geometry, but he can construct, okay, a square which is twice the area, which is twice of the given one. So he proved the knowledge is not from learning, it's from recollection from his previous life. And when Socrates talk about knowledge, he basically assumed virtue is knowledge, is kind of knowledge. So virtue is from recollection, not from learning, not from practice, not from nature. So during this time, they have a conversation about how does people learn virtue. So the conversation go like Menno said, every citizen in Athens are all virtuous. And how do they learn it? They learn from their parents. And Socrates say, no, parent doesn't teach well. Then they go to the political, okay, like even the Heraclitus, doesn't teach good virtue, then there's a jump out to one person called Anytus. Okay, he is in the audience, we don't know, and he jump out and say, oh, he start to warn Socrates, okay, you should not criticize the Aristocracy or something like this. So, and that's the, so later you will see Anytus become one of the accuser, okay, and to Socrates and bring him to death. And Anytus basically is, I think he's a craftsman, and then he is involved in some politics. So that's the story. So the conclusion of Menno is there is no teacher of virtue, and virtue is made of gift of God. It's born by that. So I just briefly talk about this one and as a prelude for the Socrates trial, because that's the starting when Anytus, okay, bring up the idea, Socrates is doing something dangerous, but Socrates commit more crime, so-called crime, okay, during this one. So any comment, questions, or something you want to add on this dialogue before we move on? Jerry, please. You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, what you just described is essentially the Socratic method, that, Socrates essentially elicits knowledge by asking questions. I think my problem with that is sometimes that feels a little false to me, and that questions can be very leading. Like if you ever watch a trial, you could see that the prosecutor and the defender, by their kinds of questions, will contain, innuendo and suggestions. So this notion that, well, I'm just asking questions, is a little bit fake to me, a little bit false, that the questions you don't ask are as important as the questions you do ask. And I think that sometimes questions can have an agenda behind them. And so I get the Socratic method. Hey, I'm not telling you what's right or wrong. I'm just leading you to what's right or wrong by my innocent questions, but they're not always innocent.
Yeah, thank you, Jerry. Okay, so I kind of think about this question until I read one article. I think that makes a lot of sense to me because I don't know anyone or how many you read on the dialogue, the Plato's dialogue. I start to feel it's difficult. Something you feel like is very simple, but Socrates, in the talk about 20 pages, just explain one simple thing. And then I think the situation is this. During that time, Plato and Socrates, they don't have some simple idea we use, so-called syllogism, which has not been used until Aristotle, Plato's student. So without this kind of syllogism, or we call logic, it's very difficult to explain something, and then that's why Socrates has to speak 20 pages to explain one thing. So that's I start to understand why it's difficult, and that's why sometimes unpack what Socrates is talking about is very difficult. And the second thing I'd like to comment on this one on Menno is actually Socrates didn't teach the slave boy mathematics, but what he is doing is teach him logic. Okay, so he got this kind of logic, and through this logic, he bring up how to do the math or geometry. So that's another way to look at this one. So that's my learning from this dialogue. Yeah, of course, the outline here, I just briefly put here is not complete, and of course there's a lot of jump around, so anybody welcome to fill in and have your own comment. So we have Anne, please.
Yes, without being rude, it appears that the group and I are not on the same page. That is, specifically, I read I think Euthyphro, is that the correct dialogue? Yeah. In addition, then after I read, I think what was known as the Apology, which was Socrates's argument before the court. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to leave the group now without being too rude, because of course, having not done the Meno for reasons which I will not judge. I don't know. I often find it very difficult to make sense of the Euthyphro. That's the one I read first, and then the Apology. I will be leaving the group. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Jason.
All right. You're welcome. Michael, please. Yeah, you can unmute yourself.
So a question about, whether or not there's a teacher of virtue. To me, the dialogue, that I could come away from it and say that Socrates was teaching virtue. Okay, and that he taught by asking questions. He taught by asking somebody to self-examine. So in effect, it was a teaching methodology.
Okay, that's you. So you believe actually Socrates is teaching virtue.
I think he's muting himself again.
Oh, you muted yourself again. Okay.
Okay, so I'm unmuting, and so what I'm saying is that Socrates really is, it is a dialogue, and there is a teacher and there is a student. You know, it's clear from the dialogue to me that it's within that type of framework. Okay, so it's true that he doesn't know what virtue is in all of these things. He claims not to, but I think that that was to teach.
Yeah,
Just as perspective, so that basically the whole thing is basically a, you know, it's his pedagogy, you know, his method of teaching. So basically he is teaching virtue effectively. You know, I mean, I could come to that conclusion that he really is.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. And then let me try to defend for Socrates a little bit. You know, he is teaching, if he is teaching the example of virtue. He is not teaching the nature of virtue. Okay, let's put it this way. You know, I know it's not very convincing, but that I can, sometimes I look at this way to give some Socrates some credit on that. So, Michael, you have anything to say about this one, or you're fine?
No, I understand that there are,
okay,
you know, particulars and general ideas about virtue, and to try to understand virtue in its totality, you know, is something that, you know, maybe we could interpret Socrates' answer as not being able to tell what virtue is because he doesn't know what it is in its totality. Is that a reasonable, you know, thing to say? Is that he does know specifics apparently about it, but he doesn't know what it is as the abstract, you know, substance of virtue or ousia or whatever that is. Anyway, enough for that. Just an observation. I'm from an amateur philosopher.
Yeah, we all, at least I am an amateur, so also we just love it. And then I think I just have to admit, reading Platonic dialogue is difficult because you have to go through all the lengthy words on that, and then sometimes very difficult to bring what's the essence on the conversation. Douglas, please. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
but we don't even know if Socrates existed. He was written about. That was basically. So we don't. You cannot say that Socrates was or was not. You know. I mean, it's good. You know what a classic Socrates from Plato's point of view, but we don't know if there was a Socrates. That's the whole thing.
Yes. Thank you, Douglas. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I should be made clear. Okay. So right now we are talking about Platonic Socrates. So we really don't know, you know, it's Socrates speaking or Plato speaking. But I kind of like consider the early Plato as Platonic Socrates, and the later Plato as Plato himself. So you probably will see the difference in the early part. Even Socrates show up on every single, almost every single dialogue except Laws, I think. But the Socrates in the later part, I mean, the Plato's later writing is not really Socrates himself, it's Plato speaking. But in the early part, at least in the Meno, in the, Meno probably is a lot of Platonic voice here. But for the other one, Euthyphro and Apology, Phaedo, they're probably Plato's version of Socrates. Michael, please.
Yes, so could we consider Socratic dialogue to be a literary form, you know, in this perspective?
Yeah. I think you have a welcome to take a different view on the Socratic dialogue, right? You can take as a philosophical writing, you can take as a historical account, you can take a literature writing and drama play, you know. So I think that's why I think it's interesting to read. If you spend time to read it, I think that's interesting. So. Okay, so if no more hands or no more discussion on it, anybody have anything on this one before we move on? So let's go to the first one, the Euthyphro. Okay, so Euthyphro, I just kind of put a timeline on that. So Theocritus is another dialogue in the later dialogue, and then that's the one famous, we talk about the man is the nature of all things. We're not going to talk about this dialogue today, but basically the end, okay, Socrates talked to Theocritus, okay, say, okay, I have to go to the porch of the king Archon, okay, to wait for trial. Okay, he had been prosecuted. So, so then the same day of Theocritus, okay, that's the Euthyphro dialogue happened. Okay, even Plato is writing on the early time. Okay. So Euthyphro, basically, this one is talking about the example of Socratic method, so-called aporia. Okay, so you ask question and the question, just like example in Meno, you keep asking question. Okay. In Meno, it's ask question until you know something. But here, Socrates keep asking question until you have no answer, so-called aporia. Okay, so the purpose is help the person understand, or let's say your student understand, okay, what's let's say in this dialogue, we talk about the piety, or talk about the virtue. Okay, so basically that's the purpose on the of the philosophical teaching on this one, and the setting is in the porch of the king Archon. Okay, I think in Athens they have the two court. Okay, King Archon is the one for the serious crime, and there's another one for the probably civil suit or something. There's two different ones, and Socrates is being prosecuted. Okay, so he's there waiting for his trial, and he met a person, and his name is Euthyphro. So apparently, okay, Euthyphro knows Socrates. Okay. And then, so the dialogue starts from, why are you here, right? And who is prosecuting you? Okay. Then Socrates said, a young man who is little known, Meletus. He has a big, long, straight hair and beard, which is year-grown. So talking about Meletus is ugly, just like Socrates, those two ugly men. So a young man prosecute Socrates. So the essence of this one basically is teaching what is piety, but not really tell you what is piety, but instead of tell you what, if you tell you this is piety, this is piety, you are giving the example of piety. Here to tell you what's the nature of piety. And then that's the whole dialogue. And so before we go that one, and the background story is Euthyphro come to the court to accuse his father murder, okay? Because one of his father's worker and murders one of his slaves, and his father decided to send him to the to prosecute the murderer. So tie him up and leave him in the ditch. And his father, Euthyphro's father, forget about it for, I don't know, for 10 days, and forget about this person. And then he died, okay? So Euthyphro decided to prosecute his father, because his father murdered his worker. But his family say, well, no, he is a murderer anyway, and he's going to be executed. Okay, so why bother to prosecute your father? But Euthyphro insists to prosecute his father. Okay, but that's not the subject this dialogue talking about. That's just the background. So Socrates knows the background story, and so okay, Euthyphro, you are going to prosecute your father, which is unusual. You must know what's the meaning of piety. So since Socrates has been prosecuted for impiety, so he said, okay, you probably can help me, right? Because you must be expert of piety. So you will teach me what is piety, what's impiety, then I can defend myself. So that's the dialogue is going on during this one. So the dialogue is long. I just try to make a few points, and then I hope it makes sense. But of course, if you are familiar with this one, please help me add something I miss or ask question or anything. Okay. So I just summarize to this way. So basics, with this background, Socrates say, okay, then you prosecute your father, then you must know what's meaning of piety very well. Then you can help me on this case because I've been charged for impiety. So Euthyphro said, piety is to prosecute what is unjust because his father doing something unjust. All right. So Socrates said, well, I'm asking you what is piety, right? You just give me an example, a specific action of impiety. All right. So Euthyphro said, okay, so piety is what please God. Okay. Then Socrates answered, well, because during that time, they all believe the Greek gods, Greek gods, they quarrel, they argue each other, they never agree. So Socrates said the gods, they quarrel, they argue each other, they even have no consensus, right? So how can you say piety is what please God? So Euthyphro have to change his definition. So he said piety is what all gods love. So the gods, they love the same thing. They just disagree on some actions, okay? But for the piety itself, that's God, is what all gods love, okay? So Socrates want to be more clear. So that's the famous line. So he asked, okay, God's love, what is pious? Because it is pious, all right? That means God would will it because it's good, right? So A is pious, therefore God love A. In other words, is thou shalt not kill is pious, is good. That's why God put in the 10 Commandments. Okay, so that's the first thing. Or the second thing, B, it is pious because God loves it. So because God loves it, therefore, it's good. So another way to say is, if God say, thou shalt steal, then steal is good, right? So doesn't matter, the nature of this one. So Socrates want to know which one is what you meant. Piety is what all gods love. So in this case, Euthyphro answer what? The second one, because whatever God love it, and we call it pious. So then Socrates start to ask, well, then can you tell me what is piety actually, in this case, since you have a clear understanding. So Euthyphro say, oh, piety is the thing between man and the gods. Okay, so and Socrates start, the dialogue get lengthy, but Socrates start to ask, like, okay, man offer something to God, and what God gains from that, and Euthyphro will talk about, oh, God receive the honor and the praise from man. Okay, so that's what we call piety. So then the conversation goes through, and Socrates said, okay, then honor and the praise is what God loves in this case, right? So you conflict, okay, with what you have to talk about, because you talk about whatever God loves it, and then it's piety. But right now you are talking about honor and the praise is the one, you know, God like it, okay? So it's reversed. So that's kind of set typical Socratic method, right? You put in the aporia. So Euthyphro has no answer on that. So he has, oh, I'm busy, I must go. So then, you know, the conversation then ended with, alas, okay, my company, and will you leave me in despair? So that's kind of very dramatic setting on this one. So that's the entire dialogue. I try to put it in the short, you know. So that's we will consider the first dialogue in the before Socrates trial. So any comment, any question, or anything about this before we move on? Michael, please.
Yes, as far as the role of the aporia, is this considered kind of a genre of this literary form, things that contain this, or, you know, is it part of that classification of, you know, this literary form that he uses that? I'm just wondering if it kind of, you know, can be used to separate his works into different, you know, types of literary style.
You talk about in general Plato's literary style? I have to answer no, because each dialogue are very different, and the later one and the early one are very different. Republic laws are very different than Euthyphro. So that's I have to say. You know. Some are, most are very long. You know. So
they don't all use this device then?
No, they don't all use. Yeah, they don't all use this method. So it's not like the same structure for all that. Like you watch the Greek play, right? Most of them are in the same structure, and you know, no, it's not. Some are like Socrates probably talked for 100 pages on one day.
So a question that, you know, that leave me in despair, you know, I mean, what is Socrates trying to communicate by that? Okay. I'm just curious.
Okay, so thank you for this question. Basically, Socrates is talking about he is being charged for impiety. So he wants to defend for himself. And he finds Euthyphro as an expert of piety. So he hopes Euthyphro can teach him what is piety and impiety. So he can learn from Euthyphro and he can defend for himself. And it turned out Euthyphro just left and say, oh, I'm busy, I'm in a hurry. So leave Socrates here. So he just say, oh, and will you leave me in despair? He's talking about he is in trouble because he wants to learn what is piety, so he can defend for himself. I think that's what he wants to say. Okay, so I think we can move on for next one. So let's move on the famous apology. And I think that today we probably will finish on apology, and then that's put to the Death of Socrates for the next week on the case. Okay, so before I really not very sure, okay, the apology is what situation is written. Okay, I will assume apology is Socrates' speech after he knows his verdict. Okay, so that's my assumption. Okay, Jerry, you want to say something, please?
Yeah, it's been a while since I've read the Euthyphro, but my recollection is that Socrates concludes that the gods are so far beyond us that they really don't care about us. And so there's not a whole lot we can know about them. And that conclusion essentially makes Socrates guilty of impiety. What he's doing, arguably, right here in the Euthyphro, is proving the prosecutor's case.
I'm not sure, I agree with you or not. And if you talk about the God is so far away, not care about us, sounds more like Epicurean's argument, based on Socrates' argument. So, but they have so many dialogue. Socrates says so many things. Probably in somewhere he talk about this. I'm not sure. And but one thing I'm sure is a lot of time you can find Socrates' speech will conflict each other from different dialogue.
Right. Well, whatever the conclusion of the Euthyphro is, right? You may have a different conclusion than mine. The fact that he makes these rational conclusions about the gods probably challenges Athenian orthodoxy and thus proves the prosecution's case against him, which conflicts with Socrates' own account in the Apology, because he says, oh, I'm very pious, I do religious observances all the time. Same thing in Xenophon. Oh yeah, I'm always following the religious observances. I'm not, a heretic. And yet what he's doing here in the Euthyphro and the conclusions he draws, and we can disagree about the conclusions, but the conclusions he draws are probably not orthodox. This whole process of what he's doing is probably not orthodox. And therefore the Euthyphro kind of proves the case against Socrates. I'm an orthodox guy. I celebrate, the lack of orthodoxy, but in a society where orthodoxy matters, this kind of proves the case against him.
Okay, thank you for your comment, and then let's see, what Socrates talk about in his Apology, and see. Yeah, I no doubt a bit about it. We can find the place. Socrates conflicts with himself, and in your statement, I have nothing to disagree on, but I think that's my reading. I think Euthyphro basics is talking about is not talking about piety. Actually, it's talking about the nature of piety. So I think that's the case. So we will see. In the later section. Thank you, Jerry. Michael, please.
Well, I'm kind of wondering if Gary's point could be taken at this is kind of where the corrupting the youth charge comes from. So that, they're questioning basically the gods as the source, of piety itself, okay? I mean, so that, questioning the whole idea basically of, their idea of what God is, it would seem like, or what God could be, in some way. And that would lead to, youth that would be corrupted by that idea, I'm just kind of putting that out there, that it does seem like it's really, going completely counter to, their position.
Okay, so let's leave this one open, this question open, and then let's move through, see what's the in Apology. Okay. So a minute. Okay. So, okay, before we talk about the dialogue Apology, and then let's talk about the Greek or Athenian court. Okay. So when you bring to the charge, I feel that probably pretty good society to live, right? Because if you have been charged, actually you have plenty of chance to escape. If you know, you can just leave the country and go to other place, like what's the person? Anaxagoras. Okay, so you've been charged, then he just dead. So basically, they need 501 jurors to make the judge. Okay, so have the defendant speak, have the prosecutor speak, and the defendant speak. Okay, each for a certain of time. I really wonder how can you speak in front of 501 people without technology. So, and they have the 2 vote. So first vote is guilty or not guilty. And then for both sides, they propose the penalty. Okay, so on that, if the defendant are guilty, so both sides propose the penalty. So they have the second vote. Okay, so then we go. Okay, so I think that's the process, the procedure. So the apology, I believe, is the Socrates speech, Plato's account, first-hand account, Socrates' speech after he lost 2 votes. So the first vote is in the dialogue, it said 221. So Socrates is guilty. He's being charged for impiety and corrupt the youth. Okay, so he's guilty. And then they have the second vote. I didn't see in the dialogue. If somebody can help me, if you know where's the source. I remember I read the source somewhere, but I cannot find it. So I'm not sure it's in the dialogue or not. But the second, both proposed, right? And the prosecutor proposed the death penalty, and the Socrates proposed for 30 something, very minimal fine. So they have the second vote. So they vote Socrates on death penalty. So the interesting is they have more people vote for the death of Socrates than vote for the guilty of Socrates. So that means some people vote for not guilty, even vote for Socrates' death. So that's the strange part. And then Socrates got angry on this part. So we'll see in his apology. So there are the 3 accusers of Socrates: Anytus, Meletus, and Lycon. Okay, so Anytus we see in Meno. So the accusation is impiety and corrupt of the Athenian youth. So during this trial, Plato lists the name. I didn't put everybody here, but I just put the important person. The person is Archimedes, which is Plato's brother. Plato himself is there. Crito, Apollodorus. Okay, we will see him in Symposium. Hermogenes, and he's a friend of Xenophon. Okay, then we'll read another account of Xenophon. So actually, the real reason of accusation may not be just impiety and the corrupt of the youth. Okay, they have some political background over there. So first, Socrates and most of his students has strong tie with the Sparta leader, okay, the 30 tyrants. Okay, so they have the tie with them, but they cannot use this one for charge because they pass an act of oblivion because they cannot bring this charge. Another one, so Alcibiades, okay, we will see him in Symposium. He has a tight relation with Socrates. He's Socrates' admirer, and he fled to Sparta. Okay, so and he is so-called the golden boy. He is aristocratic bring up and promising young people. So when they call corrupt the youth, probably means a corrupt Alcibiades. Okay, so that's the reason. And when Socrates was charged for impiety, it probably related to Aristophanes, the crowd. Okay, because Socrates is doing a lot of nature science which disregard or disrespect Zeus or their god. So let's go for the apology. Okay, Socrates apology, the Socrates speech. And I think this one is like Socrates' speech from just answer Michael's question. Not all dialogue in the same format. This one is just totally different. Just from the beginning to the end, that's Socrates' one-man show. Okay, from the beginning to the end, non-stop. With 2 or 3 stops, just ask the prosecutor, am I right? Do you believe so? Yes, okay, that's it. So it's like one-man show here. And this one is the first account. And a lot of Platonic dialogue is not first account. He is talk about, I heard this one from this guy, and he heard this one from that guy, and he heard one from that one. So he started writing. So it's like third or fourth link got information. So this one is one of few is first-hand operation because account because Plato was there. Okay, so he write down what Socrates. But of course, he is Plato honest write down every single word? The answer could be no, because he probably put a lot of things in his philosophy in Socrates' mouth. So let me, I think this speech is very worth to read, okay? But it's long, but it's worth to read. And a lot of famous, if you see what Socrates says, a lot of famous saying is in this dialogue. So I just summarize them and you may see something. And one thing I'd like to talk about is during the court at that time, usually sounds like the defendant will bring their young kids to the court and crying. So you get a pity from that, right? And Socrates specifically said, I didn't bring my kids here. Okay. So, so that shows, what kind of person Socrates is. So, and if you read in today's view, apology is not really a defense, okay? It basically is saying something, his philosophy. It's not an active defense, okay? As a lawyer, if you are a lawyer, you'll find out, oh, no, it's not a defense. So let me read through the important message, then we probably will end here today. So the opening starts from this, okay, let the speaker speak truly and the judge decide justly. So leaving the event with God in accordance with the law, I will now make my defense. Okay, so he said defense, but if you read it, you probably don't see he really defend himself. So first, the impiety, because the Oracle of Delphi, okay, they talk about Socrates is the wisest of all men, okay? But he's defended, he is not the wisest of all men because he find out that he's the wisest of all men because he is only man in essence. No, he doesn't know anything. Most of the people, other people, they thought that they know something, but actually they don't know. So in this sense, he's the wisest of all men because he's the only essence who know he doesn't know anything. Okay, so that's his defense on that. So some famous speech, he talked about he should not think of death or anything but of disgrace. So he talked about, that's another famous thing, he talked about, I'm a sort of get fly, give to the state by God. Okay, so he is talking about his bothering, like a get fly, wake up, okay, the horse, wake up the people. So, that's why, And the famous line, he talked about the unexamined life is not worth living. That's the one he's talking in his speech. Then he started to talk about when he know his death, he talked about you kill Socrates, a wise man, for they will call me wise, even though I'm not wise. Then I will rather die having spoken after my manner they speak in your manner and live. And the difficult is not to avoid death, but to avoid unrighteousness. So he's facing death. I prophesy to you who are my murderers. So he speak after he know, okay, there's more people vote for his death than vote for his guilt. So he start to say, call them murderers, that immediately after my departure punishment far heavier than you have inflicted on me will surely await you. So he start to curse the jury. So either death is a state of nothingness and utter unconsciousness. There is a change and the migration of the soul from the world to another. So he start to talk about the other world, right? This world and other world. So this one has a lot of message later on Plato is going to develop. So he said, I see clearly that the time had arrived when it was better for me to die and to be released from the trouble. All right. And the final sentence, also famous, he told me the hour of departure has arrived and we go our ways. I to die and you to live. But which of us has the happier prospect is unknown to anyone but God. So that's the way he faced death. So that's his entire speech I put in a summary. And the reason it's important is because a lot of Platonic idea is start to develop from this speech. So we probably have to end here with a little bit, I think Zach mentioned about Xenophon. Xenophon is another person who also write apology, okay, but that's up to you to decide which one is more accurate, but then I just list some difference between Plato and Xenophon. First, Xenophon is not in essence during the trial. So he heard this one from his friend, Hermogenes. Okay, so that's number one. So different thing is they talk about oracle, okay, in the story account from Xenophon. Oracle didn't say Socrates, the smartest, the wise man. He talked about Socrates more free, more just, and more sound of mind. Okay, so that's it. And the daimon or daimonian, okay, which is Socrates' internal conscience, okay, or one told the personal God. Okay, in Plato talk about daimon is kept, if Socrates did something wrong, his daimon will tell Socrates not do so. But in Xenophon's account, he talk about the daimon will tell Socrates what to do. Okay, that's a little bit subtle difference. And then in Plato's Socrates put a 30 minas penalty for himself. But in Xenophon's account, he talked about Socrates refused to pay anything because he believed if he pay, that means he admit he's guilty. So that's the difference on that. So, okay, the reason to die, and there's a subtle difference. And in Xenophon, talking about he would rather to die because if he is not dying, he will facing the pain and when he get old. So talking about because he's old, he don't want to face this kind of difficult age. That's why he decided to die. Okay, so that's the apology, and then I think we should finish here today, and then next week we should continue on the two more dialogue, the Crito and the Phaedo, which will put Socrates to death, his last day. And we probably will cover another one dialogue is the Symposium, which will talk about the life of Socrates for next week. So if I have any comment, any question for today, any suggestion, and then please let me know so we can continue, and hope we will see you next week. And then any comments? So So right now I allow everyone to unmute, if you want to speak, and if any comment.
That was very informative, Jason. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Michael, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Jason, for answering my questions, and I enjoyed it. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. And then any comment, any suggestion?
Very interesting, Jason.
Yeah, I know the subject is probably a little bit cold, but I think that's important. And then I try my best. And again, I hope if anyone who is interested and who is welcome to join us. David?
So we should read Crito for next time?
Excuse me?
What should we read next time?
Okay, so since we finished this one, so next week, okay, I will put in the page. So so next week we should start from Crito, okay, and then Phaedo.
Okay.
And then we will go through the, I didn't put that, but I will put, go through the symposium. I think that would be the fair estimate. Because today I didn't, it's difficult for me to estimate, how far we can go because it's the very first time. So,
but it gives us an idea of where to go next.
So next week we will go Crito and the Phaedos, okay, and the symposium. If we have enough time, we will go to symposium. Okay. So it is an issue.
Rizzo says their family wants everyone from the school district to the Texas Department of Safety.
Jason?
Yeah, hold on. Phyllis, yes, please.
Will you send out a copy of the slides?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
I'm not going to send out. I will put it because today is the first time, and I really don't know, what will be the best format and what kind of dynamic we will face. Okay, so I even don't know. I will face 5 people or 200 people. So it's very, very difficult. And then I think from now on, and I kind of know, and then. I will put the link on the meetup page, so you are welcome to download and then to listen. And then please let me know, how can we improve and how can we continue.
Thank you very much. Great discussion. Thank you.
Anything else? Otherwise, we will see you.